Eric Magidson here with Central Oregon Community College. Today we're going to talk about the payment function in Excel. I love this function. I use it all the time. Anytime I'm looking to borrow any money, I want to know the whole story, not just the monthly payment, hey, can I afford it, but how much am I paying for the entire loan and how much is the bank going to earn for the privilege of loaning me the money. So before we start, we need to look at some basic variables. The loan amount is how much are we borrowing from the bank. The interest rate, or APR, annual percentage rate, how much is the bank going to charge on an annual basis for us to borrow the money. And finally, loan term, I'm going to do this in years. Some banks have gone to showing it in months, trying to make it simple on you, but I think it's important to understand years because you always hear that on television, borrow a 5-year loan, etc. From those three variables, we're going to be able to calculate a monthly payment. And then we'll do some simple math to figure out the total amount we paid for the loan and how much the bank is getting. So pretty important. Before we go any further, I just want to talk about payment periods. Pretty standard that we do monthly payments, but let's talk about some other vocabulary here. Annual, or once a year payment. Monthly, 12 payments in a year. Quarterly, every 3 months we make a payment, so we're going to make 4 payments. Bi-monthly, every other month. 6 payments in a year. Semi-monthly, 2 payments every month, 24 payments. So for this one, you can see pretty simply we're going to do a monthly payment. So let's go ahead and start a loan amount. Let's borrow $20,000 for a car at an interest rate of 5.25%. Now I've already pre-formatted these for 5 years. So I want to highly encourage you to come up to the Home tab and utilize the functions. So notice I'm going into the AutoSum, more functions. I'm going to type in payment. Remember, you can pause this and so that you have more time if you need. I'm going to choose the payment function. I'm going to move it over so we can see this. Now the rate, notice, why do I like this function arguments box? Because if I don't understand the variables I need to come in, I'm going to get the wrong amount. These help me. This says the rate is the interest rate per period for the loan. For example, use 6% divided by 4 for quarterly payments at 6%. Now, we don't want to type in the percentage because that would be what? A static value. That's correct. We just want to put in the cell address. So my interest rate happens to be in B4, but that's an annual percentage rate. So what do I need to do to make that monthly? I need to divide it by 12. So I can put in that constant, that's okay. Number of periods is the total number of payments for the loan. Well, I'm going to make monthly payments for 5 years. Again, I don't want to just put in 60. I want to create those dynamics. So I'm going to say the value in B5 times 12, 60 monthly payments. The present value is the amount that the series of future payments is worth now. Well, how much is it worth now? It's the loan amount. So I put in B3. Now, if you notice, I get a negative value. That's because this is an outlay or a liability according to those accountants, which it is. But I like to deal with positive values as I'm doing my math. It makes it a little easier. So I'm just going to come right in front of B3 and put in a negative. A negative times a negative will give me that positive. So as you can see, I'm done. I've filled in the minimum variables required to do a loan, but let's quickly take a look at these two, although we're not going to fill them out. Future value is a cash balance you want to obtain after the last payment is made. So this is back in the day when we had balloon payments. We wanted to go ahead and make sure our monthly payment would include the amount we needed to save to make that balloon at the end of the loan. We tend not to do that all that much anymore. And then finally, type is pretty important. It's a logical value. When did we make the payment? Did we make it at the beginning of the period? If we did, we put in 1. And if we omit it or we put in a 0, we made the payment at the end of the month. What's the difference? Well, if we make the payment at the beginning of the month, the bank can't charge us interest on that amount we paid, whatever that principal reduction amount is for that month. So we're going to always assume we're going to make the payment at the end of the month. So those two, just in case you need them, but notice in bold, those are the minimum things we need. I'm going to say OK, and I can see that this $20,000 loan amount at 5.25% for 5 years cost me $379.72 a month. Now that's great. Can I afford it? Sure. But I want to find out the real story. And the real story is how much did I pay for the total loan? So I'm going to take the monthly payment times, again, I'm going to keep this dynamic, the value in B5, which is 5 years, times 12. Notice I didn't just put in 60 months because that would be a static value. And I find out that although I borrowed $20,000, I'm paying back $22,783.18. What's the difference? It's interest. So I'm going to take the total amount paid minus the loan amount, and I'm going to see that the bank in this case is making $2,783.18 for the privilege of loaning me the money. Now this is if I had pretty decent credit. What if I didn't have decent credit? What if I had to borrow this at 8.5% interest? Well, watch what happens to that interest paid. For the same period of time, 5 years, now the person that had to borrow at 8.5%, $4,600 in interest. That's a lot of interest, folks. So let's do one that everybody always asks me about, the ye old house payment. I'm going to borrow actually the price of the house is $275. I, in this case, have a down payment of $10,000. Well, am I going to borrow the $10,000? No, so I want to take that off the loan amount. So I'm going to take the price of the house minus my down payment, and I'll see that I'm going to borrow $265,000 for the house. I'm going to do this at 4.25%. We're able to get pretty decent interest rates right now. 4.25% and 30 years. So let's go see how much my monthly payment is on my house. Now remember, we want to use these. We're not going to use the price of the house. I'm going to come back up and find the payment function dialog box. Again, highly recommend that we use this. Let me put that right there. There we go. The rate for this one, 4.25. Remember, I'm not going to use the static value. Divided by 12, because we're doing a monthly payment. Number of periods is going to be 30 years times 12, 360 payments. Wow, that's a long time. And the present value, the amount that I'm going to borrow, $265. I again am going to come in here and put a negative in there just so I get a positive value. That's all I need. I'm going to say okay. So my house payment, without tax, titles, fees, all that insurance, my basic payment, $1,303.64 a month. So how much is the total amount of the loan? Well, I just take the monthly payment times, and then in parentheses, the 30 years times 12, because I'm making monthly payments. Hold on to your hat, folks. This number is pretty big. $469,310. Wait a minute, I only borrowed $265. Boy, that's a long-term loan, at a pretty decent interest rate. Let's figure out how much interest we paid. We'll take the total amount paid minus the loan amount. And as you can see, for this house, the bank is making some pretty good money. They're making $204,000 in interest in loaning me the money for the house. So I want to highly encourage you, go ahead, create your own loans, figure out what you're currently paying on things. It might just shock you, but at least you'll be informed. I hope this helps, and have a great day.